If you had to pick one characteristic for a police officer that would help her or him be safe, what would it be? I'll tell you mine. It's being known in the community. It's having relationships with the people you deal with. Here's an example. Let me talk to you about a case in your handout, Commonwealth versus Hem. It starts in Revere at the Las Vegas restaurant, where there is a picture taken on a surveillance camera of a guy named Timmy Hem lifting up his shirt in the restaurant and showing a handgun in his waistband, you know, kind of bragging for his friends. And the Revere police have the sense to take that surveillance video that they've been shown by the owner of the restaurant and to create a still picture of Timmy Hem that they circulate at roll calls, like, hey, be on the lookout, be aware. But our hero in this story is a man named Officer Trivkovic. Now, Trivkovic has had dealings with Timmy Hem in the past. He talks to people all the time. And even though Timmy Hem is a self-admitted gang member, he's got prior convictions of possession of ammunition and some other misconduct, he gets along with Officer Trivkovic. And every time they see each other on the street, they're able to converse and talk, and Hem is easygoing. Well, it's 2 weeks after the incident in the Las Vegas restaurant in Revere, where Trivkovic sees Hem on the street and he tries to get his attention. Hey, Timmy, what's going on? And he realizes Hem is purposefully pretending that he doesn't see him. And now he's moving with his friends down the sidewalk. And so Trivkovic kind of drives ahead, and he's now talking to a detail officer. And he sees, hey, now the group's caught up to where I am. Let me give another shot for an encounter. So he goes up to Timmy Hem and he says, hey, you got a minute? And Hem responds in a nervous, troubled voice, uncharacteristic. Yeah, what's up? Well, Hem then says, look, I'm talking to you because there've been some gun issues in the neighborhood. And, you know, I'm kind of concerned about your involvement in that. And at this point, Hem gets more nervous, backs up, goes into a bladed stance, and now does the old hike up of the pants as if they're weighed down. What does that tell you? Everybody listening to me says, John, that's an assurance check. That's somebody who probably has an illegal firearm or a weapon who's just checking it, one, to make sure it's concealed, two, because it's like you emotionally can't help yourself. You just are compelled to reach for it. And three, our worst nightmare, right? Maybe he's going to draw. Well, immediately Officer Trivkovic says, hey, relax, just put your hands in the air, goes right into the frisk, boom, pulls the gun out of the waistband. Do I have to tell you Timmy Hem doesn't have a license to carry? Yeah. Now, what did the court say? The court said, excellent. They said, excellent. See, one of the things we're seeing in cases over the last several years, especially for officers encountering people who are minorities in communities that may not have the greatest historical relationship with the police, the court is starting to say, look, officer, there's a lot of reasons why people in certain groups don't want to deal with the police. Yeah, it may be criminal, but you know what? It also may be they don't want to be hassled by the police. It also may be they just don't see you as having their interest at heart and they'd rather avoid dealing with you. And so when you go into court and you say, boy, I saw somebody who was nervous, therefore I thought they might have a weapon, the court says, you know, particularly if it's somebody in a group who has traditionally had difficult, maybe even hostile relationships with the police. The court's saying, we're not going to weigh that too heavily these days. On the other hand, when you go into court and you say, Your Honor, I have a baseline relationship with Timmy Hem. He doesn't distrust me. He isn't afraid to interact with me. We've had dialogue in past situations, and this is how it's gone down. So when I see him nervous, when I see him blade, I'm not speculating, right? I have a very good basis to believe, hey, you know what? This is different. I got a reasonable suspicion he may be armed and dangerous. Isn't it true for human beings, right? You know, if you and I go out to dinner a couple of times socially, you're going to begin to know how I am when I'm relaxed. And I'm certainly not going to be afraid of you. We're going to have this relationship. So if all of a sudden I show up and I'm very nervous, you'd be like, what's going on? What's wrong? This isn't usual for you. And you're going to respond accordingly. Look, this is not only true in human relationships. This is true in human relationships where law enforcement is at issue and danger may be present. We had another case recently. You remember our Supreme Judicial Court in a case called Sweeting Bailey. Do you remember what the officer said about Sweeting Bailey? He said, hey, this guy was extremely nervous and extremely argumentative out of the car. And the defense attorney said, well, bullshit, officer. He's part of a group that's been hassled by the police. And the officer said, counsel, I know Sweeting Bailey. I've had interactions with him. I've had situations where I ended up arresting him. He is somebody who is, easygoing. He's compliant. He talks. He doesn't challenge the police. So when it happens this time, I have to ask myself why. And the answer I came up with in the moment, based on my training and experience, is, hey, there are two gang members in the vehicle. They're buddies of this guy. Maybe he's doing the diversion for them. Maybe they are armed and dangerous. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. Now, look, some people are always going to be skeptical of law enforcement. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, sure, armed and dangerous. But remember, we're talking about a reasonable suspicion. How would we rate that numerically? Well, look, if probable cause is 51% more likely than not, then reasonable suspicion is 30%. You have to have a concrete basis to believe that the suspect might be armed and dangerous. What better way to have it than knowing and having interacted with this person in the past and seeing their behavior under normal, less stressful times, and maybe even under prior arrest when it was stressful, and then being able to contrast that with what you're experiencing in the moment. So it's interesting, when somebody asks a civilian like me in the academy, like, oh, what's the law allow me to do to be safe? My answer is, forget about the law. The best thing you can do to be safe is get good at interacting with people. Get to know the people you experience, whether it's in your patrol area, in your community, in your specialized function on the police force. Get to know people, get good at talking with people. And yes, of course, pay attention, be aware. And it wouldn't be responsible for me if I didn't also say, yeah, you got to learn how to use the tools of the trade. And that's something I'm confident you are training, you are preparing, you're well aware of that. But don't underrate the relationship side of this business, because that's winning the day when it comes to these cases where officers felt the need to frisk for their safety. And I'm going to wrap this up by going to the overhead and just recapping some of the important things when we talk about frisking. First of all, broadcast specifics. Remember, when you are looking for somebody to engage in an investigative detention, a crime has just gone down, usually the facts that support the detention to investigate will also support the separate decision to frisk. And one of the things you want to do, I've probably said it every year for the past maybe 3-4 years in service. So many of these cases are dispatch driven. They rely on past information, or they rely on information that's coming from a caller to the dispatch room. Well, when the incident is over, when you've got the weapon or somebody's in handcuffs or you've engaged in the search, whatever it is you've done, go back to that dispatcher and ask, hey, is there anything else you learned over the phone that you didn't put out over the air? Oh yeah, I broadcast A, B, and C, and then you were on scene, but I stayed on the phone and I learned D, E, and F. Put that in your police report. Well, John, how do I do that? Here's how you do it. The first paragraph is going to be the broadcast, right? At approximately 2 p.m. on October 13th, I was on patrol in Sector 1 in Unit 43 when I received a broadcast telling me to look for a young white male wearing a gray gym shorts and a green shirt with spiked blonde hair. Okay, that came out over the air. This was a report of a possible knife assault in the park. But here's the next paragraph. I'd love you to write this down in your book, your handout, in your notes. The next paragraph should be dispatch also knew that. Here's your collective knowledge. It wasn't broadcast. Dispatch also knew that. The green shirt had a Celtics logo on it. The gray gym shorts came down just beyond the knees. And in addition to the spiky blonde hair, the individual had an earring, probably silver, in the right ear and was wearing white high-top sneakers. There's your collective knowledge. Remember what the court said in Commonwealth versus Bell. Today we establish that dispatch is included in collective knowledge. The knowledge of one is the knowledge of all. The knowledge of all is the knowledge of one. The other thing is location specifics. One of the things the court is very tired of, maybe too much, but we got to live with what the court wants. This was a case we had last year in in-service training called Commonwealth versus Evelyn, where the court said we are no longer accepting high crime area as a basis for heightened frisking. A high drug area, we're no longer accepting that. You need to give us specifics. What cases are you talking about? What are the prior cases? What are the prior types of cases? In what location? How did it relate to what you were investigating? Again, I'm not telling you have to, submit every police report on every prior case to establish that this is a neighborhood issue, but you need to be able to be more specific than simply, oh, it's high crime, oh, a lot of guns here. And observations. What was so effective in the Hem case is the assurance check, right? You know what that is. The waist reach, the pants adjustment, the bladed stance. And yes, always testify to nervousness. Yeah, you're right. The court doesn't weigh it with the same degree that they used to, but it's still very valuable testimony. Whatever is relevant at all, you bring that out on the witness stand. But when nervousness or sort of, fidgety behavior, whatever you want to call it, when it truly is persuasive, is where you can say, Judge, I've dealt with this person in less stressful situations, and this is how they act. Or this is how they know me. Or I have dealt with this person in stressful situations, and this is how they behave. So when I see it this time, this is what I think may be coming next. Well, you get the point.